Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome, my friends, to the podcast. I'm so glad that you can join me today. Have you ever heard the phrase, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all? I want to ask you a question about this. Is this really the best advice? Is this really the best thing to do? This last week, I interviewed Christina Owens, and she talked about repeatedly the difference between nice and kind. And we didn't get the opportunity to talk about that during our interview. And so I wanted to expand on that a little bit. What does it mean, nice versus kind? How are those two words different? And it's an interesting question because I believe in our society, we use these terms interchangeably. But they're actually two very, very different concepts. They're very different ways of thinking, and they're very different ways of being and acting. And so let's take a deeper dive into nice and kind. So let's start with being nice. Well, being nice is really just flattery. It is the counterfeit to kind. It's sugar-coated. It's emotion shielding. It's protecting people from and yourself from the full truth. People who are quote unquote nice, they're worried about what other people think about them. They are afraid to speak up in unpleasant situations. And honestly, they're more concerned with, and even most concerned with not upsetting somebody else. They don't ever want to rock the boat. It can even be kind of two-faced, where they say one thing to make another person not upset, but they really feel a different way. It can be very competitive. It can be snide. It can be, acting from expectations, not from reality. It really is an indication of poor boundaries, and often it enables other people. It is self-serving in order to preserve self-esteem. It is superficial and fragile, and because of that, people who are nice don't respond well when they are being challenged. And finally, being nice is very easy. It requires no self-work, and there's no cost at all to yourself. That's a really big list. Now let's look at the difference with being kind. Kindness means that you are speaking the truth with love. It means that you are willing to rock the boat, even when it's uncomfortable and when it affects you too. When you are kind, you are more concerned with doing what is right. You are willing to speak up in difficult situations. When you are kind, you're worried about being kind. You're not worried about what other people think about you. And especially in these difficult conversations, it's how can I present this in a way that is kind? So that's what people who are kind will do. Kindness is really full of integrity. It's being true to oneself. And it's genuinely caring for other people and their well-being, as well as yourself. It's treating yourself and others well. It is an indication of healthy boundaries. And really, it is selfless. It's you're doing the right thing for yourself and for others, even if it's not the easy thing. It is value-based. So your intent is to bring good into the world. And it's a core strength based or rooted in strength. And because of that, you're going to reevaluate your kindness level, so to speak, often. So, and finally, kindness is it's honesty. It's being vulnerable in order to do the right thing. I think you're kind of getting the idea of what is the difference between being nice and being kind. Really, if you think about it, the core difference is what is the intent? Is your intent to serve yourself or to not rock the boat or to not change anything or whatever the case may be? Or is it to be truthful, to stand up for what is right, and to hold true to your boundaries? So it was interesting when I was taking a class a couple of years ago, and we were talking about trigger words. And in the class, the teacher was saying all of these different words, and we had to write down which words triggered us, right? So, in other words, which words instinctively gave us kind of a yucky feeling inside, like, or we just associated it with something bad. And it was really interesting because one person said, I am really triggered by the word nice because for me, somebody who is nice is inauthentic. They're not real people. And that was a really it was an eye opener for me because I had not heard of this concept of nice versus kind. And so it was interesting to me that being nice and that word nice can be very triggering for some people. So, why is it important to know this difference between being nice and being kind? Well, number one, I believe that it is a key determiner in how you value the relationship that you are in, how you value that other person. So, do you value that person enough to personally be uncomfortable for the benefit of that other person? So, for example, my mom several years ago, and I think I've told this story before. So if you have heard it before, please forgive me, but it had such a huge, huge impact in my life that I think it bears telling again. So I had depression for many, many years, and I it wasn't just not me to be depressed. And so I didn't recognize that in myself until one day my mom called me up and we were having this discussion and she said, Brenda, I think you have depression. And she was very kind about it. And I know it wasn't something that she wanted to say. I mean, who wants to, tell somebody that they're struggling, right? In a way that they can't even see. Like that's not a fun conversation. And truthfully, I was not very happy with her telling me that, and it was interesting though, because what it did do was it caused me to reflect. It gave me pause. And I had to really look at what I was doing, what I was saying, how I was acting with other people, and how I was treating myself, even. And I had to then admit that, yes, indeed, I was suffering from depression. And and that one decision, that one realization put me in a totally different trajectory. And I will forever be grateful to my mom for having that hard conversation and showing me something that I couldn't see myself because that was difficult for her. I know it was. So if you really look at this, any relationship, you can be, you think about, okay, who do you have relationships with, right? You have relationships with your spouse. You can have familiar relationships with, however that looks. You can have friend relationships. You can have a client relationship. You can have a coworker relationship. You can have a relationship with yourself. And ultimately, it is the hardest thing to do to be kind to yourself. I think it's a lot easier to show somebody else that you're kind, that you can be kind to them, but much more difficult because it's so easy and it's so much more vast how we treat ourselves because we have to take into account our thoughts too. Other people can't read our thoughts. They can just see what they can just see us and hear us and that's the extent of the communication. But we have this whole realm of our thoughts and our subconscious, and it's just massive. And so I believe the true kindness comes first by being kind to ourselves, and then it projects outward. So, number two, being kind is an indicator of how the other party values your relationship. So, we're looking at the other person. So, if you're getting nice in return for your kind, it's probably time to reevaluate your relationship. And it's probably also time to reevaluate your boundaries because perhaps you're not keeping your boundaries And clearly, the other person is likely not keeping your boundaries as well. And so that's something to really look at. You have to really judge, okay, am I receiving niceness for kindness? Or am I dishing out nice and receiving nice? Right? And so once we get that understanding of what nice and kind is, then we can look at ourselves and go, okay, where do I fall on that spectrum? Okay, number three, why it's important to know the difference between these two words. Acts of kindness are actually proven to increase your levels of oxytocin. So, oxytocin is your anti stress hormone. It reduces cortisol and it lowers blood pressure. And so, it literally benefits your health. It makes you calmer. It helps you to address things going on in your life with a much grounded, I'm trying to say this the right way, a much grounded way of looking at things and calmer way of reacting to things. We are less likely to lose our cool in different situations. And so having those, a backbone of being kind to other people, it really, really does affect your health. Okay, and finally, an important reason why we need to understand the difference between nice and kind is being kind is actually the greatest way that you can achieve your goals. It is the best way that you can manifest your purpose in life. So you might be wondering, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Well, let's look at this both individually and as well as in our relationship with others, because I think they are a little bit different. So when you look at this on an individual basis, when we feel good, we are more likely to do the work that is needed to be done in order to be productive. Unkindness to yourself is one of the greatest killjoys in the whole entire world. It will kill your enthusiasm and make you not want to do anything. Or if you still just power through and do that stuff, it probably won't be done as well it possibly could be done. When we're in a better place emotionally and mentally, things just flow a little bit better, and actually a lot better. And I have found in my life that this is 100% true. And when I know that I'm being extra unkind to myself, and I'll even say mean to inside my head, I have to really sit down and go, okay, why is it that I'm doing this? What's the underlying cause and how can I make it better? And it's something that I work on all the time, and sometimes I can see myself faltering and I have to stop and take that moment to repair any damage that is being done and put myself on a better trajectory. So what does this really look like? Well, when you are kind to yourself, you're going to have boundaries. You're going to, and really what this means is you're going to keep the promises that you've made to yourself. And again, this is the hardest thing to do because it's so easy to justify and excuse yourself for not doing what you've said that you want to do. And that could be anything from going on a walk to saying hi to somebody. I mean, anything at all. If you tell yourself you're going to do it, that is a boundary. And that is something that will breed trust in yourself when you can hold true to that boundary. And even if you don't want to do it, the minute that you do it, even though you don't want to, that just builds so much trust in yourself. And that is so invaluable. All right. And here's the thing. One more thing related to boundaries. If you struggle with keeping your promises to yourself, then sometimes it helps to find an accountability buddy. And really, that also breeds trust in yourself because you're saying, hey, I'm weak in this area. And so I'm going to figure out a way to get around that weakness so that I can still hold true to my promises to myself. So think about different ways that you can build that muscle of having boundaries. Okay, next is a different example of what this can look like. It's accepting 100% responsibility. So that means that if something fails or if you make a mistake, something just doesn't go right, you own it and you learn from it. No excuses. And I have found that, yeah, this is really hard. And because I was in a huge habit because I played victim all the time, all the time. But you know what? When you are in victim mode, you're nice. You're victim equals nice. You have to get out of that victimhood mode and into the creator mode because creator is kind. Creator is going to accept all of the responsibility because guess what? When you accept all of your fails and all of the mistakes and all the consequences that come from that, that means you can also accept all of the wins. And you can also accept all of the good things that happen in your life too, because you are seeing exactly what's happening, the good and the bad, all of those consequences. We can choose what we do and say and think and all of that stuff. We can't choose the consequences that come from that. So by accepting 100% responsibility, for that negative side, you're also saying, hey, I'm going to accept 100% responsibility for all the good things that happen too. And that, my friends, is so, so powerful. And that leads us to celebrating those wins. You know, so many times we look at those failures and the mistakes and they are just so big and they're so they take up so much space and so much weight in our lives when really it needs to be flipped. We need to celebrate the wins far more than what we do. I'm totally guilty of this. I do not celebrate my wins nearly as much as I should. And so this is something that I am working on. And I have to consciously go, okay, well, how can I celebrate this? And so I am telling you now that I am working to be better at celebrating my wins, and I will follow up with you to see how I do. Okay, so we've kind of talked about what being kind to ourselves look like. And honestly, there are a lot of other different ways that you can do it. Just kind of know what being kind is. And if you're not doing those things to yourself, then that is a cause for reevaluation. It's an opportunity, really. So now let's look at it as it pertains to our relationships with other people. What does it look like? Well, here's the thing. You catch more bees with honey than vinegar. Have you ever heard that saying before? Kindness increases your social capital. Well, what's social capital? Social capital are the relationships that you have with other people. And when you are kind to other people, that breeds trust and that makes other people seek you out. And what I have found is that so many times when you're trying to achieve a goal, when whatever that goal may be, oftentimes it's not a what or a how that you need, it's a who. And so when you have built up that social capital, you have a lot of people to draw from. So as you are building up that social capital, if there's a lot of different ways that you can be kind to other people. If you know of someone or something that can help another person, share it. Give compliments that are sincere. This last week, I called a friend and all I did was I just compliment. I just said, hey, I want you to know that I think you're doing a really good job in this project that he was working on. And he was so touched by that there was no other motive in that phone call other than to give him a compliment. How many times do we do that? I don't think we do that often enough. So give your friends, give strangers, whoever, give them sincere compliments. It will brighten their day. And then also you stick to your boundaries. Because here's the thing. When you will garner far more respect when you are firm with your boundaries than when you are not firm. When you're not firm with your boundaries, people learn that. And very often that you become the person that is taken advantage of because you will always bow to other people's whims and other people's desires. And when you can stay true to your own boundaries, guess what? People will respect that. They absolutely will. I have experienced this in my life, and it has brought me so much joy because those are the people who respect your boundaries are the ones that are your true relationships. They are going to be the people who are kind, who will receive your kindness and give it back to you as well. So it is really tricky sometimes when we're in a situation and we have to have difficult conversations. So I'm going to share with you a couple of different ways that you can do this. So when you need to share something that is may not be received very well, there are some things to keep in mind. So number one, I think it's really good to ask for permission. So you can say something like this. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being totally sugar-coated, right? So that's nice, and 10 being totally honest, how honest do you want me to be with you? Now, so what you're doing is you're saying, "Hey, I got something that you may not like, but it is totally up to you how you want me to deliver that message." And so it's up to them. And then you have to do what they want to do. So if they say, "I want it to be totally sugar-coated," and you can just say, "Okay, but that's not the message that I want to give, and I don't think it's going to benefit you." But almost 100% of the time, people are going to say, "I want you to be totally honest with me," because people crave authenticity. People want honesty. They want to know. Now, there is a caveat in that because you do have to have your words match the love that you feel for that person. So check that, how you're feeling about that person. If you're feeling angry at that person, that's not then being kind, right? So you have to make sure that how you present that is from a space of love. And it's that love is shown through your words, your tone, and your body language. So you have to be very, very careful because being totally honest does not mean mean. You can be totally honest and kind as well. So shoot for kind. Finally, you also have to understand that you cannot control the other person's reaction. Even if they say, "I want you to be 100% totally honest," and you have done your very best to come at it in a space of love, you still cannot control their reaction to your words. And so, and I've experienced this myself, and it can be really hurtful. And so you need to be prepared for rocking that boat because it may not end well, even though we may try as hard as we can. I have found, though, that in the end, relationships can be, if not repaired to the former level, they can shift in a way that is healthier. I have been in relationships where it was not a healthy relationship. There was a lot of niceness going on. And I was the one who decided, this is not how I want to be treated. And so I had to distance myself from that relationship. And that other person was really hurt by that. But I knew that I needed to have that space in order to make sure I was putting myself in a very kind place because I wasn't being kind with myself either. And so I had to, sometimes those relationships change, and that's okay. So just know that you cannot control the other person's reaction when you are sharing something that could be potentially hurtful. Okay, now let's flip the stage here. So what if you are on the receiving end of something that could be hurtful to you? Well, I think that you can look at this in light of Byron Katie's 4 questions. Now, she has 4 questions when you're thinking about the thoughts that you're telling yourself, right? And so we're going to tweak this just a little bit and look at it as, okay, if we are receiving this feedback from somebody else, call it constructive criticism or whatever, you have to ask yourself then, okay, number 1, is it true? And sometimes that can be really hard. It can be hard to say, "Oh, okay," and be totally honest. Is it true? And then number 2, can I absolutely know it's true? Number 3, how do I react? or what happens when I believe what is being told to me? And number 4, who would I be without this constructive criticism? Now, those are the questions that Byron Katie has us ask ourselves. But if you look at it in light of what, how to react when somebody is telling us something that we may not like, we can go through those and go, okay, well, is it true? How can I absolutely know that it's true? How am I reacting with that? And how does that make me feel? And I think we can add another question on there. What can I learn from this? Because ultimately, when you're trying to share something out of kindness and out of love with somebody else, it's because you care about them. And maybe they're doing something that isn't in their best interest, but they just can't see it. And so sometimes when we're presented with that, a lot of times our first reaction is to get angry. Remember how I reacted with my mom, right? I did not want to hear that I was depressed. But if we look at this last question, what is it I need to learn? Is this something that will make my life better if I learn this? That could be a really huge game changer. And understanding the intent behind the conversation, you can tell if somebody is being kind with you. You can just feel it. You can feel that authenticity. And you have to remember that even if you don't agree with it, 2 things can be true. You don't necessarily have to bow down to what this person is saying. You can agree to disagree because 2 things can be true. 2 perspectives can be true. But regardless of what is said, we have 100% control of our reaction. We don't have to be hurt by it. We can choose that. We don't have to be angry. We can choose to be appreciative. We don't have to be, we don't have to just ignore it. Or, there's so many different ways that we can react. And so you have to look at that situation and go, what is the healthiest way for me to react with this? What can I learn from it? And then go through those 4 questions. Ultimately, it is our choice whether we choose to be nice or we choose to be kind. But let me tell you, in my life, when I have chosen kindness, boy, I can feel that endorphin or the oxytocin rush. It just feels good. And I feel like I can be a better help to other people, and I have more purpose in my life. There's just something about being kind, not just to other people, but to ourselves too, to myself, that, when I do that in my life, then things just go a little bit better. And so I hope that you can take stock of your life. Are you being nice or being kind? Are you accepting nice or are you accepting kindness? I hope that we can find kindness all around us and be the kind of person that emanates kindness to other people. With that, I hope you understand the difference between those 2 words. And as you go back and listen again to Christina's story, and you can understand a little bit more why she had to make that clean break and how that absolutely changed her life, understanding what these 2 different words mean. With that, I hope you have a wonderful week and that you have found some benefit in this episode. And until next time, know that your purpose is in your story. Until next time, take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your light